Hi guys, in this tutorial we're going to be creating a key required door system using Unreal Engine 5.7.1. We're going to be covering some basics such as material creation and blueprinting, as well as some other minor but useful tips and tricks. Okay, so today we're going to cover a few different things. We'll start by creating a master material and a couple of material instances. Then we'll set a proper pivot point on the door so it rotates correctly. After that we'll build a door and a key blueprint system, and then we'll animate the door using a timeline. And then finally we'll give each door a unique key and create a simple interact system just to tie it all together. So let's get started. So when we create a project, we need to make sure it is well organized. To do this, I'm going to create a master folder and I'm going to call it _project. So everything I personally create for this project will go inside this folder, so it doesn't get mixed up with Unreal Engine's default files. And the underscore just forces it to the top of the folder list, making it quicker to find. Then we need to create two folders, one for the assets and one for the blueprints. So if you've created a new project and can't see your content browser, you want to hit Control and Space on your keyboard. Once you've done that, we want to dock it to our layout. Now let's create the folders. So right click in your drawer and click New Folder. I'm going to name this _project. We're going to go inside this folder and create two more folders, one called Assets and one called Blueprints. Cool. So once we've done that, we're going to go into the Assets folder and right click and click Import to Current Folder. We're going to select our door and we're going to search for material, and I'm going to disable Import Material. Hit Import and we should have our door imported to our level. So materials. So a material is a texture of which an asset holds. So this can be something like wood, cloth, metal, or even just a plain flat color. So we need materials for our doors and keys. So this is going to help us distinguish the difference between which key is for which door. So, i.e., would the blue key be for the pink door? No, the blue key would be for the blue door. So instead of making a new material for every single color, we'll create one master material and use instances to change the color. So this will save time and memory, and it will also speed up our workflow. Okay, so let's create our material by right clicking in the content drawer and hitting material. I'm going to name this M for material _ flat color. Hit enter, and then we're going to double click to open it. Now all we're going to do here is right click base color and click convert to parameter and just drag it out. I'm also going to set the roughness to 1, meaning it's not so shiny. After all, we're making a flat color. So once we've done this, we're going to create an instance. So right click your material and click create material instance. I'm going to name this MI for material instance _ flat color _ blue. Double click to open it, and under global vector parameters values, we're going to tick the base color and set this to blue. Hit save and close out of that. And we're going to do the exact same again, but for the pink color. Awesome. Now you want to hit save and close out of that too. So the pivot point is the point of origin for an object. So before we move into the blueprints, we need to fix the door's mesh. This is because the pivot point is currently in the center, and that's not where it should be. So this means the door will rotate on the spot, and that's not how doors open. Therefore, we need to move the pivot point onto the side so it opens like a real door, as if it is on a door hinge. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to click our stack mesh and drag it into our level. And as we can see, it's clipping in the ground, and that's not good. So we're going to move it up so we can see the full mesh. And once we can see the full mesh, we're going to click the top left selection mode and then click modeling. Okay, so now we want to click Xform and then edit pivot. So if you're using this door model, set the box position to front. For other models, test a few positions to find the right hinge position for your door. So we want our pivot down here. So let me show you what would happen if we left it where it was originally. So as you can see, it's spinning from the middle, and that's not good either. Doors don't open like that. We want it to go down the side. So I'm going to go back to edit pivot and click front, and keep in mind my grid snap is set to 1, so I recommend setting yours, and we want to move it down to the bottom of the door as possible. Now I'm happy with that, so I'm going to hit accept, and now as you can see, the door opens fully, as it should. I'm just going to go ahead and delete this out of the level. So a timeline controls changes over time. So we're going to use a blueprint timeline to animate the door. So instead of manually animating the door in, let's say, a third-party 3D software, we're going to use a form of code in order to animate it. So a timeline lets us draw a curve that controls how something changes over time. In this case, we'll be using it for the door's rotation. Okay, let's go to our underscore project folder, into blueprints, right click and click blueprint class. Click actor, and I'm going to name this BP underscore door. Hit enter and double click to open it. Under components, we're going to click add and then click static mesh. With that selected, we're going to name it SM underscore door. On the right side of the screen in the details panel, we're going to find static mesh and search for our SM door. Try not to get confused with the default Unreal Engine one, and select your door mesh. Cool, so once we can see that, we're going to go ahead and hit compile and save, and then go into our event graph. We're going to delete these two, we don't need these. We're going to be keeping event begin play though, and we're going to drag off it and search for add timeline. I'm going to name this TL underscore door open, and then I'm going to double click to open it. So we're going to set the length to 1. This is how long it's going to take for the door to open. I'm going to hit track, add float track, and name this door alpha. Once you've done that, I'm going to right click and click add curve and set the time to 0 and the value to 0. Okay, so we're going to do the same again. Add curve, set the time to 1 and the value to 1. Go ahead and compile. Now we have the timeline made. Now let's set it up for our door to open. Go back to our event graph, and off our door alpha, we're going to search for lerp rotator. We're going to set the value of B on the Z axis to 90, because we want our door to open on 90 degrees. After the return value, we're going to search for set relative rotation for our SM underscore door. We're going to plug that into update on our timeline and just clean it up a little bit. Hit compile and save. Let's go to the level editor and drag in our blueprint. Once we're in there, we're going to hit simulate, and because we're on event begin play, it should open straight away. Cool. So let's go back to our blueprint door. We're going to go to the end of it, and we're going to add a delay. I'm going to set this to a 1 second delay, because that's how long it takes for our door to fully open, and plug that into set relative rotation. Now we're going to go underneath event begin play and create a custom event. This is going to be called closed door. I'm going to plug this into reverse. Okay, so where the delay is, we're going to call our closed door event. And let's see what happens when we do this. And as you can see, after a second, the door automatically closes. And that's because the closed door event is on the reverse of the timeline. So for our interact system, we want it to work so that when the player presses a button, something will happen. So we're going to be using an input action, An input action is how Unreal Engine knows when we press a key. In this case, we're setting it up so that when we press E, it triggers our interact logic. We'll also be using a blueprint interface. A blueprint interface lets different objects respond to the same interaction. So if an object has the interface, it can react when we press the interact button. So we don't want to hard code our character to only open doors. We want a universal interact button. That way we can use it for picking up keys and not just a triggering door opening. So let's go back to our third person level, and in our content browser, we're going to go ahead and right click. We're going to go to Blueprint and click Blueprint Interface. We're going to name this BPI for Blueprint Interface _ interact. Hit enter and double click to open it. We want to name the function interact. Hit enter, hit compile, and then save, and then close out of it. Now what we need to do is create the input action. Let's go to our content, go to input, click actions, and then we're going to right click and create a new input and an input action. I'm going to name this IA _ interact. Hit enter. I'll double click to open it. Once we're in here, we're going to add two triggers. We're going to click one for pressed and one for released. I'm going to hit save and then close out of this. Now let's go to our content browser and we're going to click the input folder and double click IMC default. Click the plus button next to mapping. Where it says none, we're going to select our interact. Where the keyboard is, we're going to select the button we want to be our interact, whereas in my case it's E. Hit save and then close out of that. So a line trace is going to fire a line from the player's head to the direction that the camera is facing. When the trace hits something, we can trigger an action. In this setup, we'll use it to call the interact event, which handles opening and closing doors and also picking up the keys. So we need to find our third person character. So let's go to content, third person, and blueprints, and double click our blueprint third person character. So as you can see, it already has some controls. We're not going to touch that. We're going to go down here a little bit, right click and search for our new interact action event. Click the drop down, and off the started, we're going to search for a line trace by channel. Make sure you give yourself some space because we're going to need to put some stuff in between. So first thing we want to do is we want to get our mesh and drag it in. Off mesh, we're going to type in get socket location and we're going to set this to the head. So it's going to shoot from the player's head. This will be the start. Okay, so now we want to get our follow camera. Drag off follow camera and get forward vector. And then drag off get forward vector and search for multiply. We're going to right click the bottom pin and change it to a float. I'm going to set this to 500. This is how far I want it to shoot. Once I've done that, I'm going to type in add. And then I want to add the socket location with the multiply. Once I've done that, I'm going to plug the result of that into end. I'm going to change draw debug type to persistent so we can see what's actually happening. Compile and save. Now let's test this out. Hit play, and if we hit E, as you can see, it's shooting a line trace with 500 as the distance. Okay, so now we've done that, let's go back to our third person character and expand on this event. So off of alt hit, we want to search for break hit result, click the drop down, and then find hit actor. Drag off that and search for is valid. So we're just going to make sure it's actually in the scene. Let's search for branch and plug the is valid into the branch. Plug the branch into the line trace. So if it works, if it is valid, we're going to continue. If it's not valid, we're going to do nothing. So right click the hit actor, and click promote to variable, and hit enter, and just drag this into the true branch. Okay, so drag off the hit actor blue pin, and then search for does object implement interface. We're going to look for our BPI interact, and then we're going to drag off and create a new branch. Plug that in to the set. Okay, so is it interactable? If it is interactable, we continue. If it isn't, then do nothing. So we're going to get our hit actor, and we're going to search for interact, and then plug that into true. Hit compile and save. So a flip-flop node switches between two outputs every time it's triggered. This means first call goes to A, next call goes to B, then back to A, and so on. So it'll run the A event, then after the A event is done, it'll then run the B event. When the B event is done, it'll run the A event, assuming you call the same event again. This means it's perfect for things like opening and closing doors. So we can go A is open door, B is closed door. So we want to go ahead in our blueprint door and click class settings. Under implemented interfaces on the details panel, we're going to search for BPI interact. Add our interact interface. File and save, and now we can see we have an interact interface. Double click it, and now we have an event interact. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull this up here, and then we're going to essentially we're going to delete the event begin play and the closed door events. We're going to plug in our event interact into a flip-flop, and we're going to plug A into play and B into reverse. Hit compile and save. Oh, actually we've got an error. That's fine. We just need to delete closed door and the delay because we don't need those anymore. Hit compile and save. Go back to the level and let's hit play. So the door should open now and close. Awesome. So an array is a list. In this case, we are creating a list that contains all the keys that the player owns. Almost like an inventory system, if you will. So why do we use an array? So an array is just a list of the keys that the player has picked up. If we was to use a single variable, the player could only hold one key at a time. But an array lets them collect as many different keys as they need. So that's what we're going to be doing. Let's go over to our third person character. Let's go down to our variables and add a new variable. We'll call this owned keys. We're going to change it from a boolean to a string, and we're going to change it from a single to an array. Hit compile and save. And now let's go over to our blueprint door. Right before our flip-flop, we're going to clear some space, and off the our event interact, we're going to cast to the third person character. Off the object, we're going to type in get player character. And off the return value of the cast, we're going to search for get owned keys. Off of get owned keys, we're going to drag off and search for contains. Now off of contains, we're going to create a branch. And we're going to rig it up so it goes into the true branch. I'm just going to neat this out a bit. And on our contains pin, I'm going to right click it and click promote to variable. I'm going to name this variable key name. I'm going to drag it out so I can see it. And then hit compile and save. Okay, so the way we set our variables is going to make each door and key unique. So instance editable lets us change this value per door directly in the level, and exposed on spawn lets us set the same value when the blueprint is spawned. So together, this means each door and key can have its own unique value without having to create any new blueprints. We're going to go ahead and with our variable selected, click instance editable and expose on spawn, compile and save. Now, what we need to do next is we need to go to our third person level and test it out. So, as we can now see, we no longer have access to that door. So let's create a print string and just sort of let the player know, or us as the developer, why we can't access that door. So I'm going to put print string key not found. Now if we try it again, when we interact with it, it will tell us we don't have the key for it. Okay, so let's go to our project folder, our blueprints, and create a new blueprint. This needs to be an actor again. We're going to call this one BP_key. Double click to open it, and then click add. And instead of a static mesh, this time I'm going to add a cube. I don't have a key model. I'm going to name it to SM_key. Hit compile and save. And now let's go to our event graph. So just like we did previously, we're going to go to class settings and search for our BPI interact on implement interfaces. And we're going to double click our interact interface. Off of our event interacts, we're going to search for cast to third person character again. Drag off object and get player character. And we're going to search for owned keys. Once we've got our owned keys, we're going to drag off it, search for add. Plug that in. And we want to create a new variable. And we're going to call this, same as the previous, key name. Again, instance is editable and expose on spawn. And then we hit compile and save. And then off of this, I'm going to print a string to let the player know that we've picked it up, or us as the developer. So I'm going to right click and type in format text. Then I'm going to plug this into the hello string. I'm going to do a curly bracket, key name, curly brackets, and then key collected. This will create a new pin. So we're just going to plug in key name. Once we've done this, we just need to destroy the actor. We no longer need the key to be in the world, so let's get rid of it. Once you've done that, hit compile and save, and go back to our level. So once we're in our level, we're going to click our blueprint door, and as you can see in the details panel, we now have a key name in there. I'm going to set this to blue. I'm going to also click the door mesh and set that material to blue, just so I can distinguish the difference between them both. So go back to blueprints, and I'm going to bring in the key. And just like we did with the door, I'm going to set the key name to blue. It needs to match perfectly to the door you want the key to work for. And I'm going to change the material for the key also to blue. So the blue key works for the blue door. I'm going to do the exact same process, but this time I'm going to make a pink door and a pink key. And there we go. Just need to set the key now. Perfect. So if we hit play, let's see if this works. So do I have access to the doors yet? No. No door works. I'm going to pick up the pink key. I'm then going to try the blue door. Still no access. By now I have access to the pink door. Now what happens if I pick up the blue key? I also have access to the blue door. So just as a quality life check, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it from a line trace to a sphere trace. And this is because when I was using the line trace, I found it quite hard to hit the smaller objects with a quite a small line. So we're going to change this to a sphere trace by channel. And now holding Control, we're going to drag off over all of the pins from the line trace into the sphere trace. Now we can delete the line trace and move up the sphere trace. Set the radius to something like 25, depending on how big you want the trace to be, and set the debug type to persistent just so we can see how big it is. File and save. Let's go press play. Now it's a lot easier to pick up small objects. Now let's go ahead and essentially let's just disable the debug so we don't have lines popping up all over your screen. All we've got to do is click draw debug type and set it to none. Hit compile and save, and let's do one final play. And there we have it. There is our working unique door and key system. We've also made an interact system with an item pickup. We've delved into timeline animation and created some materials and instances, as well as fixing a broken pivot point. That's all for today, and thanks for watching.